today, Hari Kondabolu is here at UCSB. Aren't we lucky?
Thanks.
I don't know how lucky you think you are.
So, Hari, you've been invited as part of a whole program on new citizens in the USA. And I wonder if you could say how or if you think your film, your very funny, very apt, very astute film, how that fits into images of new citizens or just citizenship.
Well, I mean, it's an American story.
American story. Okay.
You know, we can say it's an Indian American story, but it's an American story. It's an age-old American story. Immigrants come to a country, they have children, they try to find a way to either assimilate or integrate. They try to find some way to preserve their culture and their norms along with trying to fit in a new place. They deal with harassment, they deal with bullying, they deal with, you know, that struggle to fit in. So I feel like this is a very American story, and I don't think it's an American story that we acknowledge as an American story, right? Whenever we talk about immigration and stuff, we talk about it in terms of European immigration in like the early 1900s and things like that, but this is part of that story as well. You know, my mom is a US citizen. She chose to be a US citizen in part because she wanted to have an experience which in some ways was parallel to our own lives, me and my brother's life. And so she is the face of citizenship. She's the face of America, as well as my father, who is not a citizen, who's a permanent resident. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that is one of the faces of America too, as is people who don't have documents, I think.
Are you telling me your father is an illegal immigrant? Okay. You know, I don't think that's helping your case, but...
We focus so much on this idea of citizenship, which is really about luck. I didn't earn it. I was born here. That's happenstance. It's nothing in my control. And I think it's about redefining citizenship as this larger idea of what are we contributing to society? What role do we play in our families, in our communities, in our country and world? I think that's the bigger way of seeing it. So I feel like this film...
Thick skin is a good thing to have, especially, you know, if you've been born in that country.
Certainly shows aspects of that.
So let me just ask you about this then. You could say that Apu in the film, in The Simpsons, he's treated in a very friendly way often by people in The Simpsons. And so he is part of the USA. He's not an outsider. How would you respond to that sort of comment?
I mean, he's the only one in that community. Certainly, he's tokenized in that regard. Also, he's not real. He's a cartoon character.
He's not real. He's a cartoon character. So you got a problem with a cartoon character who's not real. I've seen documentaries where they've gone on in India, where is it, Bollywood, Bombay, speaking to people, and they, you know, have no problem with the Apu character. Some do, obviously, but some of them, you know, don't even understand what they even say it's a cartoon character, but I don't understand why you have such a big deal about it.
His voice.
Thank you.
I mean, no, but that's crucial, though. I mean, it's a portrayal written by white writers with a white actor doing a voice which he got from Peter.
Right, first of all, right, a white actor doing a voice is like basically a white actor or Asian actor can do voices because it's a cartoon character, you know, as long as, you know, I've seen people, for example, even this guy's parents have the same thick accent that Apu has anyway, so it's not as if he's doing a very bad accent. When they went to India and they went to Bombay and they spoke to the people and they told them, by the way, did you know Apu was voiced by a white actor? They was like, really? You know, they were shocking. So that just goes to show how much of a good actor, voice actor, Hank Azaria is.
Sellers' voice, which is another white actor who got his impression probably out of some random Indian people he met and wanted to make fun of. So I don't
think it's about him making fun of the people, because in the end of the day, Apu is a hard-working guy with a shop. He's making money. He's a law-abiding citizen. He does everything. He tries everything for his family. You know, etc. So I think this kid's got not even a chip on his shoulder. I think he's got a bag of chips on his shoulder.
See that as a necessarily in a role that's like an embracement. I don't even think is embracement a word? But you get what I'm saying. It's not necessarily.
And I think that basically you just wanted to make a big deal about Apu because nobody actually knows who you are. I never heard about you until this Apu thing. Every time I type in Apu, your name turns up. If I typed in Apu before your thing, I wouldn't know who the hell you are.
The most welcoming idea to me. It's not like I saw that as a kid and I said, they like us. I never thought, I knew what that was, even though I was happy he existed initially because we had nothing. There was no portrayals. So at least this was something, even on the most superficial level.
No portrayals. I'm sure there are plenty of portrayals. You trying to time pre-Simpsons, pre-Upwood, there were no portrayal of Indian people. You know what? We'll leave that for next time.
I think it's people say, well, Apu isn't the worst character. He has depth. He's very funny. He's one of the smarter characters. Plots are built around him because of that. He has more depth than a lot of the other characters. He gets more plots than the other characters, and that's all true. None of that is false, but he's built on the faulty foundation of a stereotype. So he can only progress so far, because everything, like Shilpa says in the movie, has to be about him being the white creator's view of what an immigrant is. It's not authentic. There is no growth. As the growth that can happen with Apu is more reflective of the growth in society and the growth of the people making the show.
I can't believe this guy thinks that Apu's actually going to grow into an old guy, like a cartoon character. Is really, or he's going to have a beard as well, start growing a mustache, having shaved, like his kids, everything like that. Like this is a cartoon. This is not real. This is not reality. I would understand if there was a actual portrayal of a real life white guy portraying an Indian actor, which has been done before in the past, and basically, blackface has been done, like brown face, whatever, if that is a thing, basically. So that I would understand for people to get upset, but for a cartoon character, which is not based on it's not a real thing, basically, obviously the cartoon is a real thing, but it's not based on any particular person, stereotype or not, people act and speak that way.
Not our growth as a community. Those are two separate things.
So what did you hope, or what did you want to achieve by talking with Hank Azaria? And again, relate that to anything.
Fame.
You want. Just talk a little bit about why you wanted to interview him.
I think
I'm starstruck.
I think the benefit of interviewing Hank Azaria is that, one,
people will get to know me.
And we struggle to communicate with each other. And we talk about how divided this country is. And even in the smallest way, to be able to have a discussion about something that, in the large scale of things, is not the biggest deal, but is certainly something that creates a great deal of frustration and anger, which I have seen from my Twitter comments and Facebook messages and various reviews from people who haven't actually seen the movie. The people who...
You may say that, right, basically, but I'm very sure some people have seen the movie. That's probably why they gave you those reviews. So I don't think you should be speaking on their behalf, knowing or not knowing they've seen the movie or not, unless they've actually said, we haven't seen the movie and these are our reviews.
See the movie generally like it, and the people who haven't hate it.
So
I feel like
the people who have seen the movie like it, but the people who haven't seen the movie hate it. That's illogical.
What's wrong with that picture?
It's how the internet works. But I feel like there's this important discussion that can be had. Look at two people disagreeing on something. It's not a reflection of this larger push for political correctness or whatever people want to frame it as. It's two people having a thoughtful discussion about something, maybe not agreeing, even at the end not being in the same place, but it's a civil discussion. And I also think you win points for participating. You win points for putting your neck out. You know what I mean?
I don't think it's just, basically, that's not really fair. If you just appear and turn up for something, right, you shouldn't just win points. You got to have a valid discussion or a valid response or valid argument. You can't just show up and, not have any of them and think, yeah, well, at least I showed up. I should get credit for that.
I mean, you have no, like,
Say a bit more.
Well, I mean, I think that the fear is if Hank Azaria does this film, he's going to be grilled for it. He's going to look foolish. I mean, we have footage. We have archival footage when like nobody thought anybody would care, So I don't think that's really the issue. But if he takes part, we get to hear his perspective. That's a perspective I can only get through archival stuff to be able.
I think his perspective was this: Hank, you're very good with voices. You can do all these voices in The Simpsons, which you've done. We've seen you do so many, right? We would like you to do a audition or of an Indian accent. Could you give us a example? He probably did the example and they thought, that's great. Let's give you the job.
Able to share a space with a human being and ask them who they are and what their experiences are. What was the climate at the time? How do you feel now? Like what the give and take, you can't recreate that. So you get points for trying, and at the end of the day, I don't really care if Apu's on the show or not. It's been 20.
If you don't care if Apu's on the show or not, right, then why are you even sitting in this chair? Why did you make a film about Apu in the first place? You're kind of contradicting yourself, I don't really care about Apu being on the show or not, but yet you're targeting Apu, you're going around to all these other actors, other hypocrite actors, basically. Kal Penn, for example, when he did that National Lampoon Van Wilder, he did a thick Asian Indian accent, basically, so, hypocrite of all hypocrites.
25 plus years. Even when I made the film, I wasn't like angry about the Apu character. It'd been, I wasn't 15 anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like this was...
Exactly. You're not 15 anymore. You're a grown-ass man. So act like a grown-ass man. Put those things behind you. You're acting as if, your birth certificate or your passport should be written Apu or something like that. Like you had to change your name to that because you was getting so bullied and harassed, that so much psychological torture that you got through this Apu character, and believe me, even if you did, I don't think you're the only person on the planet that was probably ridiculed or maybe called Apu or etc. But you're acting as if every single day of your life you were tormented by this guy. I think he's blowing this way out of proportion.
Something, to some degree, I had to project anger. I don't feel that angry about the character. I got other things to worry about other than a cartoon character on a show.
So you've got other things to worry about other than the cartoon character, but yet you're making a movie, a documentary about a cartoon character which has upset you, and I think basically because a white guy portrayed him, did the character's voice. I think that probably upsets you more because they never asked you, so I think that's what your one major problem is.
Show that fewer people watch now. I feel like, to me, this is about, like, let's talk about the greater issues, the systemic issues involved. The Simpsons is a great way in because it's this kind of this show that defines a huge era of television. Also, it's still around. It's still there. And so that's what the film to me really was about. The Hank part, it would have been cool to have that conversation, but ultimately, this film was going to get made either way.
Okay, so either way, no matter what happens, you would have done the film, whether or not you had the conversation with Hank or not. So, does that mean that you wouldn't have changed your opinion and your views?
And earlier you were talking about how racism mutates, so sort of taking you along this set of arguments. How does racism mutate? Talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
Tell us a bit more about what you think.
Well, there's a few things. First of all, I will say that, we talk about the history of minstrelsy in this country. Let me first say that I think the kinds of depictions of South Asians is not equivalent to the depictions, for example, of Black Americans in this country. I feel like there's a very different racial history. There's a different set of, conditions that people came to this country. Like they can't be compared in that regard. However, there's a lineage, this lineage of mocking the other, putting the other in their place. And it's not, and I think Whoopi makes this point, it's not to be mean.
Whoopi, well, if she made this point, then whoa, I think we're all in the wrong then.
It's not to harm necessarily. Perhaps with the caricatures, the political caricatures, that's one thing, but with entertainment, it's not that. When people are having these racist images on cookie jars, it's to sell cookie jars. It's not to harm people. When Dana Gould talks about, the character, like if you take, Apu has a certain set of moves. If you don't use those moves, Apu isn't funny anymore. It's because
Well, the moves are like a part of his character anyway, so in the end of the day, it's like a package, Sorry. The moves, the way he speaks, everything, the what he does, it's Apu. He can't just talk, which I think is a good explanation. Basically, if Apu was just there, just talking, you're wanting, hello, my name is Apu, thank you, please come again, and doing that all day, it would just get kind of tiresome, right? So obviously his actions, his attributes, everything that he does basically is all part of the package which makes Apu.
if we stop making Apu funny in this particular way, he's no longer effective. That lowers the value of the show. So the cookie jars and Apu's like stereotypical jokes, they're the same thing. It's the same thing. It's not It's not trying to be harmful. It's capitalism. We got to keep the thing going. I don't have time to think. I got to create another cookie jar. I don't have time. So that's the thing. Like when things mutate, it's not because people are being mean to each other. That's simple. We're not children. There's a benefit in racism. There's a financial benefit in racism. There's it's to also to reestablish power relations. Like this is where you are. This is where I am. Like that's how this works. I think an example that I wish was in the movie but isn't is Satyajit Ray, who we talk about in the film, created the Apu trilogy. Right, famed independent filmmaker, art filmmaker from India. He makes this Apu trilogy. Satyajit Ray actually knew Peter Sellers. Satyajit Ray was trying to make a film called The Alien. It would have been his first Hollywood film. So he meets Peter Sellers to potentially, to get to know him and to see if Peter Sellers would be interested in being cast in this film that Ray was making. So they meet.
Oh, that's an example. Didn't Peter Sellers do this movie where he played the Indian guy as well, basically? Okay, sure, that was an old film, based in the past. But I don't see you. Oh, let's see if he mentions anything about that. I think it was The Party. I can't remember where he's Berlin Num Num is doing that.
They hit it off, and he agrees to be in Satyajit Ray's film, if it ever gets made. Some time passes. Satyajit Ray finally sees The Party, in which Peter Sellers is in brown face, which you saw in the film. And he's horrified by it. Like, we have this discussion, you get to know me, and this is how you view my people. And not only that, the character in The Party has a pet monkey, and the pet monkey's name is Apu. Now, that's not a name that you just throw around, Apu. It's not like everybody's named Apu. That's a clear reference to the Apu trilogy, right? It's a clear reference to Satyajit.
Well, that was way past, way in the past, basically, right? I think it was the 70s, I don't know, late 60s, 80s, 70s, I'm not really sure, basically, but, I don't know what you expect from that era and that day and age. They're not going to put an Indian guy who they don't know to play an actor, because nobody would want to see that. Everybody would want to see Peter Sellers, for example. If Peter Sellers sees somebody in the corner shop or wherever, however he got his character to portray this person, right? You should have been doing a documentary on that rather than Apu, a cartoon character compared to a real guy.
Ray. So when you think of this Apu character now, it's based on the voice of Peter Sellers, and it's based on the name of Satyajit Ray.
No. Basically, the voice is not based on Peter Sellers. I think the voice is based on people who have actually spoken and who still speak in this manner. For example, where they went into Bombay and they spoke to these people. Now, the people on the streets, they were speaking in this thick accent. But what I found was funny was the interviewer. I thought that was Hank Azaria, because that character, the interviewer, he had the same voice and mannerisms as Apu, So, you're on about something that's like stereotypical, everything like that, etc. Those stereotypes are based on behaviors that people see nowadays.
Like, that's how racism mutates. This terrible thing that happened this many years ago, this is how it looks now. You don't get to control how it's going to look. Racism is not going to look the way it used to look. But it finds a way, as long as it's productive, as long as it still can be useful, it can make money, it will exist. And it's up to us to kind of nip it in the bud before it goes any further.
I don't know about you're saying that racism, is how we can make money on it. Basically, okay, fine, maybe back in the day, nowadays, but this Apu character was not racist, so I don't know what you're really talking about. Tell you the truth.
Grammarly's 5 tips for writing a professional email.
Email writing is super important. That's why I'm going to break down everything you need to know for your next important email. Tip number 1, think positive. Sending an email that sounds negative or even neutral can be off-putting. Tip number 2, strike the right tone. Grammarly's tone detector, a must-have feature for email writing, can help with this too. Tip number 3.
Absolutely. I think you're right, and it's such a shame that that wonderful, absolutely some of the best filmmaking I've ever seen was sort of sabotaged through this. Why humor? You said we've got to, challenge racism. You just said something like, I'm sorry, I can't remember your exact words. Why humor? What is good about humor? Why do you use humor? Talk a little bit about yourself, if you.
I use humor personally as a defense mechanism. I always have. My mom has always had a very dark sense of humor, and is somebody who's been able to deal with her own pain through it. And so that was always going to be a part of my life. I don't think it was an active choice. It's kind of.
I've seen your mom in, I think, clips of your mom saying that you actually look like Apu with your hairstyle. So, I think your mom has a great sense of humor, even speaking in that thick Asian accent, Indian accent.
In the DNA at this point. In terms of career stuff, I don't see my stand-up, for example, as a social justice cause or something like that. Like, my intention is not that. I go on stage, I try to make people laugh. The end. That's the simplification, but
I haven't seen any material, but after this, I'm gonna try, very forcefully to see some of your material and see, let's see how funny you are, and if any of this SJW is any of your material.
Because I like making people laugh. It's simple. I don't want to put so much thought.
If you want to make people laugh, then I think you should try hard more on your. I don't know. I haven't seen the documentary, but maybe you should try implementing it more on your conversations.
Into it, because I want to change people's minds, and I have this incredible power as a performer. Like, no, I get paid to tell jokes. I enjoy it. It's simple. The thing is.
So what I don't understand is he's a comedian. Okay, now I would have thought he was a thick-skinned comedian. I mean, basically, people, other comedians, they do make fun of all sorts of ethnicities, right? All these minorities, basically, even on themselves. So I don't understand, as a comedian, why he is so upset with a cartoon character that is being enjoyed for 30 years, right? Basically, we should do a hashtag bring Apu back.
I'm true to my voice. The person that I am on stage is the person, that I am in real life. I believe in honest art. I believe in art that punches upward. I want to go after the people with power, just like I do in real life. That's where the challenge is creatively.
Okay, going after the people with power. I think that means going after the people with money, and because you don't have any power and you just want to get that kind of power, basically. Just like, for example, I've never heard of you until I typed in Apu online, and then your name turned up, and I was like, this is the guy that, the controversy about Apu is because of this guy.
And that's also what is most just. So I don't do what I do to make a political point. I do what I do because it's funny and it's who I am. And I think that's, you know, where the best political art comes from. I think when people try to make something that's political, you know, if something's going to be political, you can't announce, I'm doing something political. You can't do that. That's not how it works. If you're going to slip the medicine in with sugar, you can't give it to someone saying, I'm giving you medicine right now. Like, that's not how this works.
I don't know if that's supposed to be funny. I don't know why she's laughing. Maybe because she's the interviewer.
Like, you make it because you want to make it. And because...
First of all, right, to be political, you have to show that you are political and you're doing those political kind of things, so...
Because you believe in it and you think about it. So I make people laugh because I like to make people laugh, and apparently I'm pretty good at it.
Apparently, okay, and allegedly.
I think with this...
Certainly are.
I mean, I think with this film...
I don't think this woman has ever heard of a joke in her entire life or heard of any kind of humor. And like, you know, I think she would just laugh at anything. Like if he wasn't sitting there and there was just an empty chair, she would be in stitches.
The film is a little different because the film is a little bit more didactic, right? It has a strong point of view and it's trying to educate people in it. It's different than my stand-up, right? It's a different set of goals. You know, the film certainly wasn't the film I think I set out to make. I had something that was more academic in mind.
Let me guess, was it a flop?
I certainly, there's a lot of bells and whistles and colors in this film that pop up at you. You know, we have the whole chase for Hank Azaria, which is very much like Roger and Me, you know, one of Michael Moore's first films. You know, that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do.
If that wasn't necessarily what you wanted to do, right, then why did you do it? You must have obviously planned to do it, wrote it, because obviously when you do a movie or documentary or whatever it is you did, right, you have a script laid out. So obviously, and if your script or whatever the title of your name is The Problem With Apu, then obviously Hank Azaria is going to turn up in this documentary or movie or whatever it is you did, right? So you're obviously going to go after the guy. However you're going to go after him. What, you're going to put him on a pedestal or something?
However, you know, I was privileged enough to get funding from True TV, and they, you know, took me up on this and gave me a chance to make this film. And you know, when you're going to reach a mass audience on a cable network, it's not simply art. It's also commerce. It's also how do you reach the most people, you know, possible. So this became more of a pop culture documentary. And in order to drive that, you know, not only do I need to show a certain kind of passion and anger that I really didn't even feel at that particular moment, I also, you know, we had to have some kind of subplot, a human part. Oh, chasing Hank Azaria. You know, I've watched it enough times where I've kind of gone through all the different emotions and feelings you can have with it. At this point, I realized it wasn't going to be that film that I initially set out to make. The film it is now, in a lot of ways, is a lot more useful. You know, because I think there needed to be a 101. There was a reason people wanted to make this film. It's because they hadn't thought about this before, because it was new. For me,
I don't think it's that. I think, well, obviously nobody thought about it before, because I think nobody thought, well, hold up, Apu's been around for 30 years, right? Nobody's found it offensive. Nobody's made such a big deal about it until now. And obviously, okay, fine, you're a minority, we will fund you, you know, and I would love to know how much the box office, so I don't know how it was streamed, how much money you made on this.
Yeah, I've thought about this forever. My community's thought about this forever. This isn't new. This is...
Your community's thought about this forever? Okay.
This is not that... The most interesting part for me is really the Satyajit Ray stuff. It's like hearing people's stories. But for a lot of people, no one's ever thought about it, you know, and kind of seen some of these mechanisms, like how it works. Like the whole thing with Rohitash Rao, he finally gets this thing on Fox. It's a pilot for his own, you know, Indian cartoon series where he could talk about his family in an authentic way. There's no other brown people in that room. You know, I think being able to discuss that and see that and compare it to the Simpsons writing room, you get to see, oh, this is how these things get made, because we don't have a say in it. At the end of the day, I look at this film now.
Everybody has a say in something, you know. It's just whether you hear it or not.
And I think it does a lot of good work. I love the fact it's on college curriculums and high school curriculums. It was not the intent when I created it. And certainly I see why a film like this is valuable now. Certainly as a creator of art,
If you're telling me this film is on a curriculum, then obviously the world has gone to hell.
You know, this isn't necessarily the film that the pure artist makes, you know.
I still
You're calling yourself a pure artist, okay? When was this?
think it's a very
Okay,
good
I don't
film.
know how many.
solid
5
film.
years ago.
It's a solid
And
film.
5 years ago, sorry, 5 years ago, right? This interview was done, and I've never ever heard of this guy.
It does a lot of good work, but I think, you know, there's two different ways. What is the film you can make? What is the film you want to make? What is the film that you think you can make and you have the capability of making, and what are the restrictions to making those things? Because at the end of the day, especially when it's commercial art, people have to understand it. People don't understand it, you know what I mean? Then it doesn't actually do the work.
I think if people don't understand it, then it's your job to teach them, in a sense, because, for example, if you want to make a movie about something, right, and you want to reach out to audiences who don't understand it, then it's your job to teach them, you know, to explain to them how it's done.
You know, and I think at the end of the day, like, I do want people to see the work. It has to be, you know, pop culture works because people will actually consume it.
Yeah, but one of the great
All culture works because people consume all types of culture.
things is that if it's on college curriculum, high school curricula, it gives inspiration. It provides a venue, an avenue for people to start thinking.
Yeah.
Like to express it out loud, to articulate, to express those thoughts.
And absolutely, and I do think that, you know, we didn't have that even 15, 20 years ago, certainly growing up, like, these kinds of thoughts were, whoa, this is like
Right.
brand new. And now I feel like, you know, a 14-year-old now is potentially, I'm not going to say it across the board, but potentially smarter than I was when I was 23.
I don't know. Nowadays, 14-year-olds, if you ask them, like, you know, where Alabama is or something like that, they probably wouldn't know. I've seen online where people don't even know where Alaska is.
Because you grow up on the internet, you grow up watching all the stuff that's been made before, you know, which were real, like, you know, groundbreaking things, and now you have access to all of them.
And if your so-called movie is part of the curriculum, I'm sorry, but I feel sorry for all these upcoming students who are trying to learn.
What that means to me is that the art and the writing and the thought that will be created in the next 10 or 15 years is going to far surpass where we are right now. I mean, exponentially. So it's nice to know that I'm contributing to that canon. It's not nice to know that means I will be lapped soon and seen as irrelevant.
Well, let's hang you on in there, keep you in here for as
I just realized there's an audience here. I just realized is there an actual audience here? I haven't heard, this is the only time I've heard any of the audience laugh. There might have been a giggle earlier on, I don't know what that was. Maybe there was a joke between the audience member, you know, within themselves, but, you know, okay, for a comedian, maybe you're not supposed to be funny on this interview, but if you are trying to be funny, I don't think you're doing a very good job.
long as possible then. So you said there's the film you make and the film you want to make.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about what was left on the cutting room floor, if there is a floor like that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's left on a hard drive, but yeah. There was the stuff I was talking about in terms of Satyajit Ray.
You're failing miserably as a comedian, because when I just saw that title, writer, comedian, you should delete the comedian part.
And Peter Sellers and that long story is really interesting. There's tons of stuff about the childhoods and the experiences of a lot of the actors in this movie, you know, experiences on set, experiences growing up. Like, Asif has some really interesting stories about just growing up in the UK and the fact that, like, they had multiple, like, racist depictions of South Asians. And so when he came to the US when he was a kid, he's like, oh, you just have the one? Like, to him, that seemed great.
Is there
you know?
no creativity?
You know, I definitely wanted to talk about, I also wanted to do some comparison with the UK. I wanted to talk about the 1990s and how there was a South Asian boom, and you had all this South Asian art. You had a show like Goodness Gracious Me, which talked, you know, with South Asian sketch comedy, which was parallel to In Living Color here.
Look for it on YouTube. It's very funny.
It's very funny, and I feel like, you know, It's
So
very much a
oh, right. Goodness gracious, I'm from the UK, yeah, right? Goodness gracious me, right? That was a stereotypical show aimed at non-Asian people. I personally believe, right? That is a show you should have gone more about. Now, why aren't you upset with that show? Because there were Asian people portraying Asian people in a stereotypical manner, but it's okay because they were Asian people and they can do it. That's for example, what's that woman, the Asian girl, Chinese, Korean, I can't, Black Aquafina, when she does her voice acting all black, yo, etc. Right? Obviously nobody has a problem. Some people do have a problem, all right, basically, right? But when Hank Azaria, a white guy, portrays does an accent which like I says in Bombay, when people didn't even notice it was a white guy, they thought some of them thought it was funny. Sure, some of them didn't, right? But that's because some of them were like saw a snippet, a clip of a show that's been going around for 30 years.
of its time, but I do think that it was very, to me, for me to see that was like, whoa, how were they there and how come we're here? There's a lot of stuff. There's so many different angles. I wanted to talk to South Asian convenience store owners and get their perspective. I wanted to talk to their kids about what it's like that your father is this, or your parents are convenience store owners. Did you hear anything growing up as a result? What kind of pressures did you feel? I wanted to talk to other like working and middle class South Asian people about their lives, and we definitely have some of that footage. 49 minutes, you can't fit it all in. So there's a lot of stuff like that which I think addresses holes I see. Like, I don't want people to leave this thinking that being a convenience store owner or a cab driver or having a job like that is demeaning. It's not that that Apu being a convenience store owner is demeaning in itself. That is not true. What is demeaning is that he's only seen as servile, that he doesn't have more dimensions, that, because the nature of he's a cartoon character, he doesn't get to tell his story, and that there's nothing to contrast that with. Whenever you see, it's different, a little different now, but like certainly growing up, whenever you saw an immigrant character, especially in a comedic space, that person was a prop. It was a prop for a joke. You didn't really know that person's story. You didn't know how they got there. You didn't know what other experiences they had. It's irrelevant. It was acts. Accent, broken English, like there was a reason they were there for the white protagonist. I hate the idea that these, different people doing working class jobs, doing difficult jobs for their families, you don't get to hear their voices. And Apu to me is just like, oh, it's funny, this guy gets like shot all the time because he has a dangerous job. And like, yeah, there's dark comedy in that, but like, I knew people who got shot, whose family members got shot because they had these jobs. And you know, I would like to hear their stories sometimes, or I would like to hear their children's stories. I do feel like there's progress, because I feel like I always get hit with that, but things are different now. I do think there's progress, but I think we should also realize the reason there's progress isn't because of this idea of like, for the sake of diversity, we have to do something, it's just. People don't do things in this country because it's just, all right? What happened is the studios figured out, oh, these brown people have money too, and so they started creating more programs because they realized there's money to be made. Same reason why, like, there's new cookie jars now. That's what I'm saying. There's new cookie jars to make, and that's what it is. And maybe it's very cynical, but I think it's incredibly honest. You know, the internet changed a lot of this. The internet showed that people could build their audiences regardless of the previous gatekeepers. And as a result, those gatekeepers want that money. And so they're going to give you money to make more money. So that's what I think a lot of this is. And there's more networks than there ever were. And that means there's more holes and there's more programming and there's more perspectives that can potentially make someone else money. So I think that's where we are. I mean, I don't necessarily see this as a positive or a negative. It's just the way it is. And it's a lot better now than it was because at least we have a chance to be able to control our story.
How to get the most of Grammarly free.
It's Kayla on behalf of Grammarly to tell you all about the free version of the best communication assistant in the world. Millions have chosen to go beyond their default grammar checkers and use Grammarly. My cousin Izzy, a graphic designer, is one of them. Izzy loves how quick and reliable Grammarly is at providing feedback. Another reason Izzy signed up for Grammarly is its conciseness suggestions, something she wasn't getting from default grammar check.
I'm making it up as I go along, everybody.
He's good, isn't he? There's a few more films in there.
You know, it's funny, these are the moments where I'm like, man, I spend a lot of time in academia before I decided to do stand-up comedy, and I can about anything, and it is...
Excuse me?
I'm not saying...
We're game after, yes?
I mean, come on, I know how papers are written.
I don't want to hear.
You didn't read those 8 books. You read the bibliography of one book and you cited them all. I know what's going on.
Thanks, Hari. You made yourself really popular with me. So, some people have said, okay, continuing on a slightly more serious way, some people think that The Simpsons is anti-working class. Would you ever think of it like that?
I mean, I haven't. I haven't thought about it that way. I mean, no, I haven't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
If anything, I see a lot of moments where they do challenge power, especially like I was saying in the book, because of that Montgomery Burns character. I see how, you know, they often talk about, like, you know, for example, in the monorail episode, like how people are kind of not pitted against each other, but fooled into believing that there's a magic solution because they desperately want improvement and change. You know, like I don't, you know, I'm not a working class person. You know, I was privileged enough to grow up middle class and upwardly mobile, so I don't know, you know, I don't think I have the perspective to fairly judge that. But I mean, from my watching, I never felt that. The Simpsons, it's such an incredible show. It is so well written, and it definitely, in terms of satire, was the sharpest thing on television for the longest time. That's why I feel like some of the race stuff is kind of this is kind of beneath the level of writing, and even in the movie, you hear Mike Reese, one of those early writers, saying that we don't want to make him an Indian character because that's a comedy cliche. The Indian accent's a cliche. Even then, they knew it was a corny thing to do, but they did it anyway. It just feels like it's lazy comedy writing, and I say that as a comedian. I know what's cliche and I know what's been done to death, and I know what in that show is really forward-thinking comedy writing. I'm not just talking forward-thinking politically, comedy writing, whoa, I never thought you could come up with a plot like that, or that's a fascinating joke. And I mean, they're some of the best writers. That's the reason why so many people who came out of The Simpsons, have created so many other shows that we love. So I can't answer that working class question, but I will say that there certainly are things, and I think it's reflective of the time period also, that don't really fit how brilliant The Simpsons is. I think some of that is also nobody thought a show was going to last 30 years. They probably figured a couple of years maybe. Fox was a network people didn't even know would last more than a couple of years either. So the whole thing is 26, 27, 28 years. Nobody thought that.
Hari Kondabolu.